Hi, this is Kathi Quinn with Floriani. Floriani is a division of R&K Distributing, and I want to welcome you to this week's Project of the Week. I know you've been seeing Trevor a lot lately, but I'm going to tell you I love his classes. They're so informative. They're so good. I just love it when he does the classes. But I jumped in this week. I'm teaching an applique hands-on class online. And I'm finding that a lot of my ladies don't really understand applique. They maybe never have done it before, or they're kind of confused between manual cutting and digital cutting. So we're going to look at that, and I'm going to go over that because I know if I've got women in my classes and gentlemen in my classes that are having this issue, I wanted to put out this weekly video. So I'm going to come in to my custom shapes. Now in my custom shapes, we know this is vector artwork. It's perfect, it's clean, it's great. I'm going to just grab this bird. Now we know this is vector artwork. Now how would I know if I didn't know that folder had that in it? Well, I would get my magnifying glass and I would zoom in. Do you see how there's no pixels, no little squares of color? So I can tell you right now, this is vector artwork. And if you don't know the difference in look, let me get a little design out of here. Here we go. Let's open this up. And I will show you that one. Let me pull this over. Let me get this little, grab my bird and move him out of the way. Okay. If I grab this little butterfly and I zoom into him, now vector artwork also comes in JPEGs, bitmaps, PNGs, they come in actually behind the screen so you can digitize over the top of them. Vector artwork will turn immediately into a stitch. And I want you to see the difference. Do you see the difference between those edges? And the difference is caused because one is vector and one is a backdrop file, which is a JPEG. I'm going to turn off my backdrop file because we're not going to work with that. We're going to work with our vector file. And so now I can take this guy here and I can now come across my one-click wonders at the bottom and I can turn him into anything I want. I can turn him into a fill stitch. And let me 3D it so you can even see what that is. I could turn him into a mesh. I could auto lace him. I can do anything with my one-click wonders. But what I'm interested in today is my applique. So I have turned this guy into applique. Now, if I'm using a digital cutter to cut my fabric, and what a digital cutter is if you have a silhouette, a cameo, a scan and cut, an artistic edge, a Sizzix, I feel like I'm missing one. But if you have any of those, you can cut your fabric. And how you cut your fabric is from the right side of your fabric. So what you're going to do is I would iron my fabric onto a piece of either Floriani Applique Wonder or Quilter Select Applique stick. I am now going to stick that paper side down. I'm going to put my right side of my fabric looking at me onto my cutting mat, and I'm going to cut out this bird. Now, how am I going to get that into artwork if it's not a Floriani? If I can't just pull up that bird again. Let's say this is ABC's applique design I bought. How am I, number one, going to create a cut file? Well, I'll show you real easy. I'm going to right mouse click on this bird and I'm going to break up my applique. You see that at the bottom right hand corner? So now I'm going to change the color of this one too because we won't be able to see it. I've got a a placement, a tack down, and a finish. I have 3 stitch sequences. So here is my placement line. Now we lay our fabric down. Now I'm all about pre-cutting. If you're doing professional embroidery, you don't cut in the hoop. But if I laid a hunk of fabric over that, I would then tack that down, and it's going to tack down inside. It's going to be 25% smaller so that it's just inside the placement line. and then I'm going to finish it. That's how it would be done. But if I'm going to cut this on a digital cutter, I need that placement line. So I'm going to left mouse click on my placement line. I'm going to right mouse click copy. I'm going to open a new piece of paper and I'm going to paste. Now all I have to do is come down to my one-click wonders and turn my placement line back into a piece of artwork, or any placement line into artwork. So now that this is artwork, I can save it as my SVG, my FCM, and now it's going to cut my bird out with the right side of my fabric looking at me. But if you are going to manually cut this out, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to print this. And now I will be cutting, I will print the applique wonder or the applique, iron it to the wrong side of my fabric. Now I'm cutting from the wrong side. So what do I need to do? I need to mirror image this. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to bring it back to my original design and paste, just so we can visually think this through. Okay, so I'm going to grab my first one, my first line. Now, if I'm digitally cutting from the top of my fabric, the right side, I'm going to cut this out just like the bird looks. So I will stitch out that placement line. I will peel the backing off my applique wonder, my applique. Now I have that sticky surface, and I'm going to stick it down within the placement line. Now, if I have printed it and I'm manually cutting with a pair of scissors, I'm going to print this on my applique wonder, and I've mirror imaged it. Why? Because now I'm not cutting from the top of the fabric or the right side. I'm going to cut from the wrong side. So when I cut from the wrong side of the fabric, in order to fit this in, it had to be mirror imaged, because now I'm looking at the wrong side of my fabric. So when I peel my backing paper off, I'm going to have to stick it down. And so you see why I had to mirror image it if I'm cutting from the wrong side of the fabric versus cutting from the right side of the fabric. Okay, let's go back. Let me just get that same bird, and I'm going to turn him into an applique. Now let's talk about this applique function for just a moment, since I already know I have people that are not used to applique. We're just going to talk about our applique feature. What this is going to do is it's going to sew down a placement line. Now, if I were cutting a hunk of fabric, I'd lay it down and it would sew the tack down right inside of it. Then I would trim and I would do my finish. Okay, that's how it would work. Well, if I am pre-cutting my piece, a lot of times I don't use the tack down. Now, if it's a heavy towel or something, not only am I going to use the tack down, I'm going to turn it into a zigzag. If I'm using a big satin stitch or something. But I can get rid of that tack down. But what else I can do is I can come up here and say, you know what? I want a blanket stitch. And then I can decide how far apart do I want, what's the stitch length, and how big is the bite. I can change that here. Now here you can see, and let me change color too. Let me go ahead and change the second color because it's going to be white. You're not going to see it. So let me change it to another color. There we go. Now you can see it. So I'm going to stitch down a placement. I'm either going to have digitally cut and peel my paper off and stick it down, or I've manually cut. I'm going to peel my paper off and stick it down, and then I'm going to do the finish. I didn't need a tack down. But see, I could have created this with a blanket stitch, or I could come in here and say, you know what? I want a motif. So now I have lots of decorative stitches to pick from to finish the placement on here. So I could say, maybe I want this one. And I can change the motif size because these are fully rescalable since they're within the software. So there you go. I've got something different. So you can come in here and play. You can mess around with this. applique is a ball, but what I really wanted to do today was clear up digital cutting, manual cutting, and why we reverse the image. That seems to be a little bit confusing, so I wanted to straighten that up. So I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. I hope you have a great week and have some fun with applique, because now you know how to cut any piece on your digital cutter or print it out. And maybe I didn't show you that. Let me grab that. Let me go back here. I can now say File, Print Preview, and I'm going to come into my settings, because you don't see the bird, right? Because my bird was artwork. So I'm going to pick artwork. I don't need crosshairs. I don't need any notes. I don't need a color analysis. I don't need design colors. I don't need any of this. And I'm going to say okay. And now it's going to print my bird out on my applique Wonder. Now, obviously, I could get 3 birds on here, so I would have put 3 birds in a row. So I could have used up all my applique Wonder or applique. Then I'm going to iron this to the wrong side of my fabric and cut it out. So that makes it, you have the ability to do any applique design. You can pre-cut your shape. It's going to use less fabric. It's going to be more accurate, because it's not going to be pulling in and leaving a bald spot. It's not going to be sticking out and leaving hairs, because you cut it in the hoop. This is the way to go. So have an amazing week, and we'll see you again next week.